It's good that there's at least two here.
Pretty sure Dan is on someplace.
Okay. PNC. What's that stand for?
I just tried to remember. Could probably come up with a whole bunch of things. That wouldn't be right.
Yeah. It's Facebook or FaceTime.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really care for it, but I don't know.
Oh,
It's fun to see.
it's kind
They
of
don't
fun. Yeah. Our twins play with it and they call them.
Oh,
The phone is all over.
yeah.
Sometimes I'm looking at the ceilings, sometimes I'm looking at their toes.
Well, good morning. We thank you for joining the webinar this morning, and just wanted to give you a couple little housekeeping notes. We wanted to let you know that the recording, we are recording the webinar today, and that it will be edited. We want to make it as general as possible so that we can use the webinar again. To eliminate some of the noise in the background, sometimes we can get feedback. And so we will ask you that if you are not speaking, that you would actually mute your sound. And then by muting your sound, that allows us not to have as much feedback. And then when it's an opportunity for questions and answers, we certainly do welcome you to unmute and to at that time to ask your questions. So I want to thank you for being a part of the transitional training for congregations. We do know today that we have some that are a part of search committees, some who are session members and other officers in the church, and some who are members of our Commission on Leadership, who will be liaisons to congregations and transitions. And so we want to welcome you all this morning to the webinar. As we begin today, I want to give an opportunity just to know who's on the call. And so I invite you to say your name and the church that you're from, and please let us know your role at that particular congregation. And so take an opportunity now to unmute and then to share with us your name and where you're from.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Douglas Baxter, Winnebago, Minnesota, First Presbyterian Church. I'm on council now and head up the administration committee.
And I'm Carol Rickard, also from Winnebago. I am the church secretary, I'm on council, and have a few other duties in the church.
Welcome, glad you're on
As
the
we're
call.
searching for an interim.
Yes, we're happy that you're on the call this morning.
Mary Klosterwer, Wyndham, and
Wyndham.
I am the clerk of session there.
Wonderful. Mary, are you also on the search committee?
We are not to that step yet.
Okay.
We are just, have our toes in.
I understand. This is a good time for you to be in this training. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is it Casey?
Oh, PNC Conrady. Minnesota. I'm on the session.
Casey, I can't hear you so well. You're from which congregation?
Minnesota.
Okay. How's our sound? Do you hear us okay? Because we're getting a little bit of feedback from your sound. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome. And did you say Kasota?
Fulda.
Oh, Folda. Okay, wonderful. Wonderful.
You can't hear her.
Anyone else on the call this morning?
Yep, this is Marcia. I'm from the First Presbyterian Church in Wyndham as well, and I am I'm an elder on the session. And if you see me disappear, I'm still listening. I'm just chasing my toddler around, but I can hear you, even if I'm not on the video screen.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for being on the call this morning. Is there anyone else on the call that may not be on video, but sometimes we have people who just dial in? Okay, well, it sounds like everyone is here. There may be others that joined us. We did have one call last night, and quite a few people were able to participate last evening. The other option, if you ever find that you're not able to hear us well, or if you're trying to speak and it comes in a little fuzzy, you can always use your video to watch and then use your telephone line to listen or speak. And that's also another option for you. And so a little bit about what we will do today. Most of the people on the call today in the training are people who are just getting started. And so some of this information will be totally new for you. And I invite you to stop me and ask your questions. And I think that will make the training just a little bit richer as we make sure that we are answering your particular questions. So let me check with you. How's my volume? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me well? Okay, thank you very much. So one of the things that we try to do as we talk about congregations that are in transition is to talk about first things that you want to know first, things you want to do first. So as you are beginning to think about pastoral leadership and think about your congregations in the future, we invite you to do discernment around your leadership needs. I'm sorry. So we want you to take some time. Although I know that there is an urgency to make sure that you have someone in place to provide pastoral leadership, it's also very important that you take time as a congregation to have family conversations, as councils, to have family conversations around your leadership needs. When we say this, we're not just talking about your present need, but your future needs. You know, who are you looking for in the future? What direction is your congregation hoping to go in? And what particular leader would you need and help you to move into that direction? The other thing that we strongly encourage is that you would learn the call process. There are some things that are very particular to the Presbyterian Church USA that's going to be different from other denominations. And sometimes even within the Presbyterian Church, if you've ever been a part of another presbytery, there are some things that may be done differently from presbytery to presbytery because the denomination gives us flexibility around those particular things. And so you want to learn the particular call process for the Minnesota Valley's Presbytery, and then have a good understanding of the polity of the church of the PCUSA. And then there is one resource that the denomination recommends for all congregations in transition, and that is the Uncalling a Pastor resource And we'll give you more information about that. So I want to first refer to Book of Order references. We're not going to go through these references this morning, but I want to provide the references for you and encourage you as you begin your work as a council, that you would really take time to review this as you form your search committees, that you would take time to go through the various references from the Book of Order. The references do indicate particular call process for the denomination. So call and installation, you're going to find that in G2.08. Pastoral vacancy, the elections of a pastor nominating committee. That's pretty standard, where the authorization to elect a pastor nominating committee would come from our Commission on Leadership. A call process, a particular process that's recommended by the denomination, terms of call, and installation service. You're going to find all of that in G2. This one becomes very important for us in G20504 because when you begin to complete your ministry information form, one of the things that you're going to immediately notice that there's a lot of different titles for pastoral leaders. And we don't want you to get confused by the titles versus looking at the relationship of pastors to congregations. So the titles on the church leadership connection are for matching purposes. It may be a pastor, associate pastor, it may be an interim pastor. All of those titles are for matching purposes. But our polity only identifies two types of pastoral relationships: an installed pastoral relationship and a temporary pastoral relationship. The major difference is how that relationship is established. So, installed pastoral relationships, the pastor is called by the congregation. It is through a congregational vote, and that person is called and installed. You can be in a part-time position and be an installed pastor. You can be in a full-time position and be installed, but the relationship is established by the election of the congregation. The temporary pastoral relationship is established with the council of the church. That means that this is a 12-month covenant relationship. That person is not voted on by the congregation. Certainly you would want the congregation to be aware of who's coming to provide regular pastoral services for you, but this person is in a temporary position. Sometimes that title might be supply pastor. It might be interim pastor, because I know that at least one of our churches, the Winnebago Church, is looking for an interim. And so that person would fall under the category of a temporary pastor. And so you want to make those distinctions as you're beginning to look at pastoral leadership to understand how those relationships are established. The next really important part here is the session restrictions. Prior to 2012, anyone who served in a temporary pastoral relationship was not able to serve as the next installed pastor. Well, our polity around that changed in 2012. What it really spoke to were relationships such as, if someone was the associate pastor at a church, that person would not be eligible to serve as the next installed head of staff of the same congregation. Or if someone was the temporary pastor, interim pastor, supply pastor, they would not be eligible to serve as the next installed. All of that has now changed. If the way is clear and if it's for exceptional reasons, the temporary is eligible to be elected as the next installed pastor. It does require a supermajority vote of the presbytery. That means that 3/4 of the members of the presbytery would have to vote that it is the wisdom of the body that this person moves from a temporary pastor position to an installed pastor position. Any questions about anything I've said thus far?
There's quite a
Any
bit
questions there?
I don't know if we can remember it all.
Did you have a question? Mhm.
Just so there's
Well,
quite a bit
stated.
of information there, I don't know if I can retain it all. I'm writing some stuff down. So.
I'm going to provide all of the PowerPoint slides for you.
I was
And
wondering that.
I certainly will. We will provide those PowerPoint slides for you, and please stop me if you have questions, and we certainly will try our best to answer those questions for you.
And how about stated supply from the presbytery?
So status supply would fall under the temporary pastoral relationship.
Okay.
So temporary, just think of it this, the easiest way to think of it, if a person is serving a church on an annual contract, a 12-month covenant agreement, and the relationship is established with the council of the church, that's a temporary pastoral relationship, regardless to what title you put with it. If that person is elected by the congregation and they're in a more permanent pastoral relationship, that's an installed pastoral relationship. All relationships, all pastoral relationships are established between the presbytery and the congregation, the council of the church, or the session, depending on whether you call it a council or a session. But that's how you know the difference in relationships. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the partners in the call process. And I think this becomes very important as people are thinking about how does all this come together. So there's a partnership between the presbytery, the congregation, and the pastor. And a relationship can't be established whether it's an installed relationship or a temporary relationship without all three parties agreeing. It's very important to recognize that when a person is called to serve one of our congregations, that person becomes a member of the presbytery, even if it's for a temporary period. And so there is a vetting that has to take place with the presbytery. We have to make sure that that person's credentials match. We make sure that they are a theological match. We make sure that they are a good fit for the congregation. And so a part of what happens in the interview process, there's certainly the initiative that the search committee would take or that the council of the church would take, and you would do your interviewing. And then if you have a candidate that you really have interest in and you want to go to the next step with them in the process, then you would be in contact with your presbytery Commission on Leadership Liaison, and we would begin background checks to make sure that there are no charges against this person, to make sure that the person is in good standing with their presbytery. If they are a Presbyterian minister, if they're a minister from another denomination, we would have to verify with their denomination that their credentials are, that they have standing in their denomination. We would look at the educational experience that they have. And if they are a person who is graduating from seminary, we would have to make sure that they have completed all requirements for ordination, meaning that they have a seminary degree from an accredited Presbyterian authorized school, that they have completed all of the requirements for ordination by their preparation committee of their presbytery, and that they have completed and passed all of the ordination exams. So a part of our vetting would be looking at all of that information and making sure that there's no red lights that would prevent this person from being able to serve. Any questions about any of that? Okay, well, let's move on a little bit. So as you're thinking about how you would like to search, it's going to be really important that you think about whether you want to do a local search or a national search. Local searches make more sense when you're looking for less than full-time positions, when you're looking possibly to call somebody within the presbytery or someone from a neighboring presbytery, and you just want to be able to complete a job description and send that information out. Even if you do a local search, we encourage you to have conversations with the congregation around the type of pastoral leader you're looking for. So you would not necessarily have to complete a ministry information form. You could possibly just fill out a job description. You want to make sure that you have listed whatever credentials that are required for this individual and how you would like to receive applications. That's a local search. And we would post that information on the Presbytery website. If you do a national search, it does require that you complete a ministry information form, and then you would be applying for positions using the Church Leadership Connection system. And that means that your position announcement would be available on the national website, and you would actually receive personal information referrals through the national website of people who are looking for positions in our area. And so that's the difference between a national search and a local search. And you have to determine what makes more sense for you. One of the resources that we highly recommend as you move forward and you establish your search committees is that you would learn and utilize the user guide for presbyteries. It's the user guide for the Church Leadership Connection, and it gives you step-by-step what you could do on the system, how to access passwords, how to retrieve your referrals, and that information is provided, and the link is there for that user guide. A couple things you want to know as you begin to work with your COL liaisons is that you want to first elect a PNC chair, and that person will be provided a login and password to the Church Leadership Connection system. That person, as your PNC chair, would be able to create and update your ministry information form. We call it MIF. They can request a rematch of the ministry information form. They can also access any personal information forms, we call those PIFs, that are referred to your PNC for consideration. You also can provide a login and a password for your PNC members, and the members would be able to actually view your ministry information form online, and there is a ranking column that allows you to be able to rank as you are looking at PIFs. You might decide that this person, you want to consider them for further conversation. You can select that. You may say that the person does not meet the basic requirements, and you can select that. You can say that that person has already selected a position. So there's 6 different things that you can use that ranking column for, and anyone who has the opportunity to view your referred PIFs can log into the system and review the status of a particular candidate for your position. Also, it's very important to know that the Church Leadership Connection follows our polity as far as approvals. So the clerk of session of your congregation would also receive a login and password. And the way things would work is that once your ministry form has been approved by the Commission on Leadership, the PNC chair and the clerk of session will be provided logins and passwords. The clerk of session, once the session has approved your ministry information form, would actually go in and approve the form online. Following that, an email will be sent to the Commission on Leadership co-chair, who is Beverly Brock. Beverly would go in and approve your form, making sure that everything is correct. And then I would receive an email that says that this Ministry Information Form has collected all approvals and they're ready for matching. So that's the process and how it works. It's important as you are working toward establishing search committees, thinking about your needs as a council, that you remember that you are working on behalf of the congregation, but yet you are separate from the congregation. That means that the congregation does not direct your work, but certainly you want to be in touch with the congregation, providing regular reports of where you are in your process, but you do work independent of the congregation. Any questions about that? We try to really give some clarity around that because it can be very confusing when you're thinking about the relationship between the various councils, and particularly when you elect a nominating committee. Your nominating committee should be commissioned to work on behalf of the congregation. But the relationship is still such that you need to make sure that if you are deciding on the type of position is going to be full-time, part-time, the experience level, the compensation and benefits, you want to make sure that it fits within the budget of the church, and that the church knows how much money you are designating for the pastoral position and for benefits. Moving costs are something that you have to take in consideration. If you do a national search, is the church prepared to pay for moving costs? One of the things that we often need to mention to search committees is that you really think about the cost of living in your area and really do your homework to realize, what does it cost for someone to live in your area today? So many people bought their homes years ago, or they've been renting for a while, and they haven't even thought about what it would cost for a new person settling in your area. What would it cost for them to live? And so we'll talk a little bit about compensation later on in the presentation, but it's something to be in conversation about, but yet you are called to work separately from the session in your discernment. So as we begin to talk about what kind of pastor, well, this is the tricky part of the search process. Normally when people think about pastoral leadership, I love this cartoon where it says, you know, these are the shoes of our last pastor. We want you to try them on for size. I often hear people say, can you clone the last person that we had? And that would just make everything all right. Well, certainly we can't clone those individuals. And we've had experiences where we've had pastors that served us very well. We've had some experiences where it was a bumpy relationship, and sometimes it just didn't work out well. And sometimes they walked on water. And the reality is that no two people have the same gifts. No two people are going to serve alike. And how do you reconcile that as you're moving forward as a council or a search committee? How do you reconcile that people will bring different gifts to the table? And how do you talk about your needs, keeping in mind all of the things I just shared, that you may have had a wonderful pastoral relationship, a long-term pastor, but now you need to move forward. So I'm going to ask that you would unmute for a moment, and let's just talk about some ways that you can have this conversation with your councils and with your congregation. How are you talking about what kind of pastor, and moving beyond just wanting to clone the person you just had? Any conversations?
I can speak for Wyndham. We sent out the critical question survey that we filled out about our congregation. We actually sent that out to every member in the congregation and then had a drop box in the church that they could for those questions. And then we had a question at the end that just said, is there anything else you would like the session to know? So that's kind of how we got feedback from the congregation about what they were looking for in a pastor. And we felt have kind of an anonymous survey was a good way to get everybody's opinion, because you have people that are outspoken and have no problem voicing their opinion, and then there are people that maybe aren't comfortable voicing their opinion, you know, to a session member. So we had the option of, you know, you could either talk to a session member or you know, fill out this anonymous survey and drop it in a box in the church at any time. And then Mary and I compiled all the responses and kind of got a picture of what the congregation was looking for and what qualities they were looking for, what they liked about our previous pastor and what they might want to see in a new pastor.
Sounds good. I like that process. Thank you. Others, what are some of the things you're doing?
We've nominated, what, 4 people now for the committee to interview. We're pretty early in all this process, so. But somewhere along the line, I don't know if it was you or someone said that, you know, down the line, if we do get a pastor, we're gonna have to share with another church.
We may have to share.
Well, I heard it was, we were required.
Well, maybe not.
Okay.
Maybe not. And that's something, there are, I think what's being communicated is there is a conversation with 3 churches that are neighbors, close neighbors, and thinking about what would it like to do collaborative ministry. But we certainly are not looking at yoke ministry at this time or any of that. I think that's something that the congregations themselves would need to make some decisions about, whether or not they feel like they want to yoke or whether they have a sense of call to be in relationship with another congregation. So it's not anything that we are proposing. We are kind of testing the waters, just trying to see what makes sense. One of the things that we do know is that in order to obtain a pastor, you really have to have the best, most attractive call that you can present. And that means financially, that also means an opportunity to do ministry. And so the stronger your call is, the more likely you're going to get someone who would say, we're willing to come and to serve. And it's not all about just finances. Sometimes people are just really excited about the opportunity to do ministry. And they'll look at, you know, what is the opportunity if I come to this particular area? Do I have the ability to shape some things? Can I have an impact locally in the community as I'm meeting my neighbors and working in the community? What role can I play? And as people are thinking about congregations, that's something that gets them very excited. So last night, one of the things that came up is, why did I come to Minnesota Valley's Presbytery when I probably had the opportunity to go many places? And I mentioned to them is that Minnesota Valley's Presbytery, out of all the presbyteries that I was considering, had the best process. They asked very good questions. They were very clear in their process. They had a clear understanding of what they were looking for in an executive presbyter. And there was opportunity to do ministry. So there was opportunity to come and be creative, to share some things that I learned. And that was very important for me. I didn't want to just go someplace where I was managing staff and just managing a system. I really wanted to go to a place where there was opportunity to shape what was next. And so even as people are thinking about pastoral positions, those are things that get people excited. Is there opportunity to be the public theologian in this particular context? Is this congregation ready to move forward and do transformation type things? These are things that get people excited. Or it could be the other. Is this a congregation that's just waiting to die? And they have little energy, they're not interested in doing very much, they're just wanting to be chaplained. There's a need even for a pastor to serve that type of congregation, but it may be less attractive to someone if that's all that a person does. And so even as you're thinking about your big dreams for your congregation as you move into the future, take in consideration how you will communicate those wishes and desires to potential pastors, because you've got to be excited about your congregation in order to make your call attractive to other people. So let's move on a little bit more. So the choice of a pastor should be guided by a congregation's vision for the future and not just its memory of the past. We certainly are informed by the past, but we are not stymied by the past. We have our present and we have a future. And that's going to become critically important. So choosing leaders. You probably can't see it, but there's a word right here that says discernment. And discernment is really important because a good part of what has to happen in the search process is that you do the real hard work of praying together, talking about your core values, being very clear about your theological position, having a good understanding of your needs, a good understanding of the resources, your financial resources, your people resources, your energy, and talk. Family conversations. The more you do that, the easier it's going to be to know who God might be sending to be your next pastor. So it's very important that you spend time doing discernment and not just completing a form. So what makes for a good pastoral match? Of course, we'll understand that pastors and congregations often think about a good match differently. So pastors and worshipers understand a good match differently, the congregational strengths, meaningful worship, caring for children and youth, empowering leadership, looking to the future are connected to a good match. Conflict, pastoral turnover are detrimental to a good match. So as you're looking at candidates, if you see that this person every year or 2 years have been looking for a call, that might be a red flag for you. Now, if they're a transitional person and a part of their role is to go and to work with congregations in transition, every 2 years, every other year, they would be looking for a new position because that's a part of the work that they do. It's a specialization that we greatly appreciate. But if you find someone that never seems to stay anywhere very long, that could be a red flag. On the other hand, the same with congregations. If we find that this congregation every 2-3 years is looking for a new pastor, can't quite put your finger on it, but no one ever stays in the area, that's a red flag for call seekers. So what makes for a good match? For ministers, when you look at a very stable or an increasing church, when you're looking at increasing finances, they're linked to a good match. And when we say this, it's not just about how much money a church has, but it is about the sustainability of a call. Can that call be sustained over the long run? And so each of you, if you haven't already done it, the Commission on Leadership will ask you to complete a financial sustainability form. Have any of you completed that form yet?
I think we have, haven't we? Maybe. Can't remember.
Yes, we did the sustainability.
Oh, okay.
You did. Okay.
Yep.
And that's Wyndham, is that right?
Right. Yep.
Okay. And so all congregations are asked to complete that form. You can have your councils to complete it, but it's a very important form. It tells you a whole lot about where you are as a congregation. And it becomes critically important as you're looking at sustaining a call. You want to take some time to talk about the results with your congregation, with your councils, so that you know where you are. A good match yields ministry satisfaction, less stress, not just for the pastor, but for the council, the congregation in general, and a commitment to the congregation for the pastor. These things make for a good match. So Calling a Pastor is a resource that I mentioned to you that's available online. It has tutorials that you can find, and it also has a workbook. If you have not printed that off, you want to print it off, you can just download it and print it off. So I'm going to switch to where you can find this online, and let's see if I can get it for you. Okay, just one moment. I'm going to try to get it this way. Okay, just 1 minute. Okay. I would love for you to be really familiar with the Presbyterian website. And if you hadn't had a chance to go there, you want to make sure that you do become familiar. There's all kind of resources available. This is, can you see this okay? Okay, this is the Church Leadership Connection homepage. And on the left-hand side of this page, you're going to see About CLC, call seeker information, calling organizations, forms and guides, the opportunity search, and we're going to spend some time there. But the first resource is the On Calling the Pastor resource. This resource is available, and here are the videos that are available to you. The videos are not very long. They are 4 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes. You want to become familiar and take some time to go through each one of the videos. They're going to really help you as you begin your search process, whether you're looking for a temporary person, a transitional interim, or whether you're looking to fill that installed position. The On Calling a Pastor resource has sample interview questions for you, but you also can get those same type of interview questions from our manual online. But this information becomes critically important as you think about what should you ask with a mission study, what makes for call and fit, what makes for our polity, how is it different? That's a short one, and I'm going to play this. And let's see if we can get it to work. Can you hear that?
There's no sound here.
No sound.
We're not hearing it.
No sound. So let's see what we can do here. I'll try it again. If not, then we're just going to refer it to you. Still no sound?
No.
Okay. We won't do it then. I'm going to ask you just to review each one of the videos. so that you're familiar with, and I'm sorry that the sound didn't work, but this is the website, and it provides all kind of information for you, and there's tons of resources for you to refer to. We'll go back to the PowerPoint. One of the things that you want to see on in the On Calling a Pastor resource is that it breaks down the information, our theological foundation of the call process, teaching elders, their relationships, covenant agreements. It will give you some samples to use if you want to look at contracts. It give you a sample of the call process, talking about dissolving pastor relationships, establishing the relationships, and lots and lots more information. We've talked about discernment. We've talked about theological foundations of a call. One of the things that I want to encourage you is to be open to the Spirit. Be open to who God may be sending your way, and just don't close your doors. You don't know sometimes who God might be sending. It may be a racial ethnic person. It may be a second or third career person. It might be a commissioned lay pastor, someone who has completed training, but maybe they haven't completed their seminary education. We always, whenever possible, try to fill our pastoral positions with Presbyterians, but sometimes that doesn't work, and we might need to look at our ecumenical partners. And we do have relationships through the Formula of Agreement with the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, the Reformed Church of America, with the United Church of Christ. Ministers who are ministers of Word and Sacrament in those denominations can serve Presbyterian churches through the orderly exchange as an installed pastor. Now, those relationships are not established directly with the congregation, but it is judicatory to judicatory. So as you begin your search process, if you find that you're not finding a Presbyterian minister that is a fit for your congregation, then we can explore the possibility of working with another denomination. And sometimes you may have someone who wants to serve in a temporary capacity, and they are not a member of the the three denominations that I just mentioned. And at that time, we would have to consider their credentials and to see whether they're a theological match and whether they're a good fit. But sometimes there is the possibility that a minister of another denomination might can serve in a temporary capacity for a congregation. Any questions about that? Okay, so when you get to the point that you are ready to start receiving personal information forms and you are ready to begin interviews, there's a couple steps. First of all, the commissional leadership will provide permission to you that you can form a search committee. If you are looking for a temporary pastor, then you are ready as a council, can begin putting your position announcement together. And I think that at least the Windham Church, you already have, not Windham, the Winnebago Church, you already have a position description completed.
Yes.
And that's already posted online on our home website. But you have not received approval yet to establish a search committee. There is a small mission study that's required by the presbytery that you complete, and your liaison will begin to work with you around that. So you're kind of doing a two-step approach, I believe. You have a position description for an interim pastor position that we're using to do a local search, but I believe that you're going to be completing a ministry information form so that you can do a national search to fill your interim pastor position. Is that your understanding? Winnebago, is that your understanding?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Our
Okay.
clerk is not here, so I'm not exactly sure what communication has been from the
Okay.
clerk to the liaison.
Okay. I think you're going to be doing both a local and a national search. Because you have a full-time position that you're trying to fill, and we would like that to be a little bit broader than just within the presbytery. So I think that's the way it will go. You're going to be kind of doing a both and. Wyndham, have you thought about how you might want to search for your position?
I think so much of it hinges on what our, if we're going to yoke, we're going to talk to Mountain Lake at the end of this month,
Okay.
you know, and last month we couldn't afford the preacher we had. Now this month it looks like we could have a full-time preacher.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. And yeah, and so these are the things that you just have to really think about as you move forward. So this is going to feel like something way far in the future, but it's not that far. So I'll go through it quickly and you can tell me if you have any questions. It's going to be reading personal information forms. We call them PIFs. So Keith knows a little bit about that because he was a part of the search committee that helped to call me here. And so I'm sure he spent many hours reading through personal information forms, and maybe some of the others that are on the call, maybe you've been a part of a previous search committee. The question that we normally get is, how long does it take? It's almost like the car ride. When are we getting there? Are we there yet? And boy, it really can be challenging sometimes. And the answer is, it all depends. And that is probably the most honest answer I can give you. It all depends. There's so many factors that determine how long it can take. And what are the particulars? What type of position do you have? Is it a full-time position? Is it a part-time position? Is it temporary position? What's the context? Is it a town where it would be difficult for a person to move a family to? That might be a challenge for people. Is there work for a spouse, a trailing spouse? Is it work there? So I want to show you a part of the national website that provides you information around who's looking for positions in our area. And so again, I'm going to go to this information and I hope that you can see it clearly. On the Church Leadership Connection, there is a report that's called the Applicants and Positions Report. Let me know if you can see it. Can you see this report?
Yes.
Yes.
It is a real-time snapshot of the number of people looking for positions using the Church Leadership Connection system of the denomination. So this report is as up to date as 11:53 a.m. Eastern Time. So at 11:53 a.m. Eastern Time on January the 7th, there are currently 2,029 call seekers. Now, you may find this a little humorous. Last night, it was 20,030 call seekers. That means one person just removed their name from the search process or accepted a new call. Because last night, it actually was 2030. So 1,879 of those individuals are ministers of the Word and Sacrament, teaching elders. 135 are first call seekers, and 15 of those individuals are people looking for non-pastoral positions. There are 650 positions in the system, and 111 are available to first call pastors. There are 847 female call seekers in the system and 1,165 male call seekers. This is just an interesting statistic for you. Today, there are more females in seminary than there are males. That's just something for you to know. More females than males. There are 39 racial, ethnic, multi-ethnic congregations open for pastoral positions in the system. There are 326 racial, ethnic call seekers in the system. There are 795 individuals who have placed their PIF in the system, but they are open to a call, but they're not sure. And let me just say, what becomes very frustrating in the call process is that you're going to have a number of people who are fishing for positions. And what that means is just they're putting fillers out. They're not too sure they want to leave where they are, not too sure that they're willing to make a big move. So they're not going to be matched with you through the system based upon competencies and all those things, but they may do a self-referral to you to say, thinking about your position, it sounds a little interesting. Maybe I should try to talk to this church. Now, that's not to say that that individual is not a match. It just means that they're really taking their time and they don't want to do a broad open search where they're being matched through the system. They want to be a little bit more selective. So if you continue to look at this report, it tells you, again, the type of positions that are listed in the CLC, the titles of these positions, and how many positions are available, and how many people who are looking at those positions. The most interesting part of this report is the geographical choices. So if you come down and you find Minnesota, you're going to find that there are actually 3 positions in the state of Minnesota where people are looking for first call pastors, only 3. There are 24, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong number. There are 9 positions open in the whole state. And there are 85 people looking for positions in Minnesota. That's how you use this report. So that gives you information. Between the 3 presbyteries in Minnesota, there's only 9 positions. Now that means that there's 9 positions posted on the national website. That doesn't mean that there's only 9 positions total. That's just posted. But we do know for those who are doing a national search, there are 85 people who have listed, I'm willing to serve in Minnesota. Any questions about the report? So
I have a question here. And on the open not active, are those included in that 2029?
Yes, it is included.
Okay, so those are not a separate number.
No, so that 2029 includes those who are open and not active.
Okay.
And so you always want to keep that in mind when you're looking at the numbers so it doesn't get skewed.
Okay.
For you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? So it goes back to that whole question of, are we there yet and how long? How long does it take? Well, we do know that there are certain things that are happening that's different. One is who's going to seminary, who's seeking pastor positions today. Well, we do know that, again, there's more women in seminary today. We also know that for the last 10 years, we've been trending where the majority of our candidates for ministry are coming from mid-sized to large churches. And so there's a little bit of a challenge because although you've got more candidates that are coming from mid-sized to large churches, the reality is that the average worship size across our denomination is 82 people in worship. That's the average. And the average membership is 150. So although you have candidates that are coming from very, very large congregations, and you've got candidates that are wanting to do ministry, coming to smaller churches, coming to smaller towns, it can be quite an awakening for them. And so one of the questions that we continue to put before people is that, are you open to call? Are you open to going wherever God may send you? And if you're open to going wherever God may send you, then you realize that a part of your yes is to be responsive and to go and to see what the Spirit might be doing. So there has to be this sense of prayerfulness that leads people out of their comfort zone. And that's true for the search committee, and that's true for the call seeker, that both are willing to move out of their immediate comfort zones in order to be able to say yes to God. And a part of your discerning is looking to see whether or not that person is truly answering a call, or are they looking for a job? It's a big, huge distinction between a call and a job. And your search process is different, even though I know it's very common for human resources people to be added to the list, to be a part of a search process, because you feel like these people have good interviewing skills, and all of those things are true, but it's not filling a job position. It really is someone who is called to be the pastor of a congregation. And so you really want to know, how do you sniff that out and distinguish the difference? And again, these are huge factors. So when you look at PIFs, there are 4 questions that the call seeker will need to complete. Describe a moment in recent ministry that you recognize as one of success and fulfillment. Describe the ministry setting in which you believe God is calling you. What are the areas of growth you identified in yourself? And describe a time when you've led change. These are behavioral questions. You want specifics. You want people to really give you an understanding of how they are doing ministry, and you want to be able to verify this by other parts of their personal information form. So if someone says that question number 1, describe a moment in your recent ministry that you recognize as one of success and fulfillment, and they've been in ministry for 10 years and they're telling you about something that happened in seminary, that's a problem. Because you really want to know something recent. Tell me something recent. Number 2 is the passion question. This is where you should really, when you read that question, as a person talks about their sense of call and vocation, if that doesn't get you excited, there's a problem. You know, because you should be able to feel that this person has a calling from God, and they have this awareness of who God has called them to be and what particular gifts they have. And growing areas, a growing edge is not negative. It's only negative if the person is not working on it. We all have growing edges. And then when it says, describe a time when you've led change. When I'm teaching this type of course to call seekers, one of the things that I would say to them is that this question wants to know, give me the example, the situation, tell me what you did, and tell us where things are now since you took an action. You're looking for very specific information. Any questions on this? Okay, so understanding leadership competencies. When you complete your ministry information form, this is for matching purposes. You're going to be asked to select 10 competencies that you're hoping that a person would have as a part of their leadership toolbox. The categories are theological and spiritual interpreter, communication, organizational leadership, and interpersonal engagement. And so as you are looking at your 10 competencies, you want to be realistic in what you're asking of people. A competency is very different than a person saying, I have knowledge. A competency is about learned, skilled, and wisdom. in that particular area. So if you're looking at a first call pastor, one of the things that you will find on one of the competencies talks about organizational agility. It's very hard for a first call pastor to say that they have organizational agility, because organizational agility assumes that you have more knowledge than just enough knowledge of the book of order to pass the polity exam. That's not what it's about. It's about your work within the denomination. So a first call pastor is not to say that they haven't done things in their presbytery. It doesn't mean that they haven't done things as they are have been in seminary, but it's very unlikely that a first call pastor can truly say that they have organizational agility. And the way that you can check this out, on the personal information form, there is a section that talks about service to the larger church. It asks you to describe your service to the larger church. If there's nothing there, then that tells you that that person has not been very involved. Okay? So that's a way to verify some of the information. Another place, for example, on the personal information form, it will ask you, there's a competency for lifelong learner. Well, lifelong learner, where do you think you might find some information about a person if they say they're a lifelong learner? What do you think?
Well, their education.
Their education, continuing education, their work experience. People who know how to complete a personal information form well does not just list dates and times and names. They give you a description, a brief description of the work they've done in each one of their positions, the same way you would do with a resume. So that's the difference. So people who know how to write a good PIF will provide that information to you. People who are not too sure about writing a PIF is the same way in getting a well-written resume versus getting one that is lacking. So again, think about what you're asking of people. Sometimes people will say, we want to change agent. That's another competency. Well, again, you're going to look at their experience and know whether or not they have training in leading change management. Do they have conflict mediation skills? But one of the other things that you can certainly do is to go back and look at how did they answer question number 4? If they are a change agent, can they clearly describe a time when they have led change? Something very measurable. So again, you choose 10, the person chooses 10, and then there's a matching that's done. Leadership competencies look at measurable wisdom, learned skills, gifts and talents, a holistic leadership blueprint. So how do you evaluate leadership competencies? One of the things that you look for is how a person receives results, how they bring out the best in themselves and others. That's something that you may hear, not necessarily just from the person, but you can also hear that if the person is really getting a chance during an interview to talk about their particular gifts and graces for the work. But you certainly can get that as you're doing reference checks. If they can lead with vision, demonstrate a person's acts with integrity. And this is a big thing. Integrity in the process, you're going to find as you begin your process is that sometimes you wonder about individuals. You call them, they do not return calls. People promise you that they're going to send you follow-up information and you never get it. You feel like you're always chasing them down. Well, do you really want a pastor you got to chase down to get information from? The other would be people who indicate that they're willing to consider your position and move to the area, and then you find out once you get your heart set on them, they really weren't serious. They were just putting fillers out. They were just kind of hedging their bets. Those are integrity issues. You're going to run across a number of people who have their forms in the system And because they just didn't know when they were going to be searching again, decided to leave them up, and those individuals are not truly seeking a position. You're going to find all of that. And so again, you want to think about, how do you evaluate these things? Communicates how a person improves organizational system. When a person serves, whether they are serving as a first call pastor and they've had field education experience, or whether or not they've been a pastor and they've served several congregations, are those ministries better or worse since they've been there? Those are things that you want to ask. And so one of the competencies that I love, and I remember when I was working with the Office of the General Assembly and putting all of these competencies together, there was a committee of people that were working with me and vetting the questions. And I remember putting hopeful, and people thought that's the craziest competency I've ever seen. But think about the definition of hopeful. Maintain stability in the moment and hope for the future, provides direction, guidance, and faith when describing basic needs, and helps followers to see a way through chaos and complexity. Now, you may say, how is that a competency? Well, I think this falls under spiritual and theological interpretation. What does this person preach about? How do they work with councils? How are they with people in times of struggle? What's the evidence that we have that this person can deal with chaos and complexity? Are they able to bring a sense of calm and lower anxiety? Or is the glass always half empty, or is the glass half full with this person? Do they have the ability to see far in the future, or is it only just reactionary, right, what's right before their face? So as we talked about this, I also asked the committee, have you ever seen a pastor that wasn't hopeful? And I asked you that question. Have you ever seen a pastor that wasn't hopeful? You don't have to say their name, but have you ever seen a pastor in that way? Yeah, I think we all have. And we also have seen those who have some of these wonderful characteristics that we can name and put our hands on, and it's the type of thing that makes us love them and call them beloved. So again, what makes for fit? You can watch the video, but simply there's a shared vision and values that complements the congregation's foundation stories. When we talk about motivation, you want to test the spirit to see whether they are from God. You evaluate the factors of background, ambition, wealth, social status, and power. When you look at skills and abilities, you're talking about weighing the basis of what's been in the past or past behavior related to a particular leadership role, and you evaluate the differences between candidates. So when you're talking about offering a call and really trying to put together your best call package, you want to make your call attractive. And so we have to begin with effective salaries. In our presbytery, we use a sliding scale. First call pastor all the way up to people who have more than 10 years of experience. And meeting the presbytery minimum, you've got to be able to meet those minimums. But you also want to do your very, very best. Now, here's something that we do in business, and we don't recommend it in the church. You cannot begin with your lowest offer, because your lowest offer will not get you the pastor that you need. You want to begin with your best offer. So when you're completing your ministry information form, it's going to ask you to give a range. You're going to give a range between what your minimum salary will be, all the way up to what your maximum salary. Candidates are not able to see your minimum and your maximum range. They're able to see your minimum. And so one of the matching criterias The primary matching criteria is it's going to be your geographical choice, the type of position, your effective salary, the years of experience. Okay? Geographical choice, the type of position, pastor, associate pastor, temporary pastor, full-time, part-time. Okay? Your experience level and your salary. So you want to do your very best, and you will want to have conversations with your congregation and your councils to make sure that you're offering the very best salary that you can offer, because again, you are trying to attract people to your particular church. And I'll give you some information how you can actually look at averages across the country and within the Presbytery. And so again, are there incentives that you can provide? One of the things that we know is that today we have seminarians on the average seminarian. It's not even a low percentage. The average seminarian graduates with $75,000 in educational debt. And so when you're talking about individuals accepting a call, some people are really open to going to wherever the call is, but the reality is that they can't afford to accept a call for $40,000. They just can't do it. And especially if it's a full-time call, because a full-time call is just that. That means that you are employed by the church and you're not employed anywhere else. If you are in a bivocational call, that means that there is more than one employer, but then you've got to grapple with who's the primary employer. So again, what incentives can you provide? And we do know that within the denomination, there are incentives for paying back educational debt. Also, our presbytery has an educational debt grant where it's a shared grant between the presbytery and the congregation, and a person can get up to $1,500 each year to pay back an educational loan, and you can find that online. Now I'm going to go to the website and I'm going to pull up the Board of Pensions. Let me get here. And pensions.org is a website you want to become familiar with. And there are a number of programs here for working with pastors. If you go underneath the Board of Pensions, you'll see Healthy Pastors, Healthy Congregations, and it's for first-time pastors. That's a program that's available. You can use the search to put in educational debt. And it tells you about other programs. People Joy Educational Debt Reduction is a program that's available. Ministers Educational Debt Assistance, Ministers Educational Debt Applications. There's grants, there's assistance programs. You want to look at all of these different options because the options allow you to provide incentives to your call package. If you meet the requirements, some of the requirements say that you have to have a budget under $200,000 or your membership can't be over 100 people. So you really want to look at what programs are being provided and to see whether or not your congregation meets any of the criteria and make that a part of your package. Let me stop and see if you have any questions. Any questions about the incentive programs?
Well, I think one thing we've looked at our Wyndham Church, Sandana, is we're going to try and provide the benefit package, maybe lean a little bit more that way than the salary side, thinking that we're kind of looking at a 3/4 time, half to 3/4 time pastor. So we're, you know, and that person maybe can't get benefits. So we're thinking that we'd provide full-time benefits, and then maybe not have the bigger salary.
And that could be very attractive, Keith. It really can be, because if you're not in an installed position, you're not required to pay them benefits. Now, here's the trick to that. You have to be, your hours, you have to make sure that you're meeting the hour requirements that the Board of Pensions have, and that that person is not in an installed role. And then you can take advantage of what Keith is talking about, the Board of Pensions cafeteria plan. And that means that you can say, the salary is going to be less, but we're going to pay full Board of Pensions dues, which is 37% of the effective salary. And that could be a very attractive call for a person. So again, you want to take time to review these various options, see what makes sense for you. The Board of Pensions is really trying to assist congregations in providing the best package possible, but just know you're going to have to really work at making sure that you have the information that you need. Also, there is a salary summary. And again, if you're doing a national search, you want to make sure that you understand where people are. And as they're looking at literally how much money do you make in different regions, know that a person considering coming to your church, if you're doing a national search, is looking across the nation. And they're going to be considering, you know, what's the salary if I go here? So if you look here, it says Living by the Gospel. This resource provides you lots of information. It's effective January 1, 2020. It tells you what the Board of Pensions is doing. It gives you salary averages for across the country. Last year, we know the average salary across the country was $59,100. That was the average. And then you have to add onto that, if it's an installed position, 37% for benefits. And then there's additional things like continuing education and travel reimbursement and things like that that you need to add on. But please take some time to familiarize yourself with this report. I just wanted you to know that it's there. And then, so again, you want to make your call as attractive as possible. You want to make sure you have a clear process. As I said, one of the things that was very appealing to me about Minnesota Valley's Presbytery was the fact that they had one of the best processes that I had gone through. And that means that they had good questions that they asked. When you spoke to the search committee, you knew that they had been in conversation, thinking about things. They had a clear direction in which they wanted to go. Candidates know if you are ready for your interview. They know that. They also know if you are unclear about your direction. Communicate well and often. Don't leave weeks of time between when you contact a candidate for an interview and when you follow up. Even if the email is just, thank you for participating in our interview, where you find the nicest way to say it if they don't meet your basic requirements or that you're going to be moving on to other candidates, because candidates talk. Candidates talk. And so again, clear communication, get your form letter together. If you have someone that you want to continue conversations with, talk to them early and often. Keep that communication open. Designate a person to do that communication on behalf of the committee and make sure that they're sharing reports with you. What you can share is your process, your timeline, what you're doing. What you do not share are names of people. You don't do that because you want to make sure that it's a confidential process for the person seeking a position You may have people within the presbytery that apply for your positions, and you don't want to jeopardize their relationship with their current congregations. So again, I've already talked about this. I showed you the applicants and positions report. Know that no search process is foolproof. Mistakes sometimes are made. There are resources. What questions do you have in our last few moments? It's a lot, I know. And I encourage you, as you continue in your process, to be in contact with your COL liaison, and they will be happy to answer questions. I'm always happy to answer questions. The clerk, Pam Proddy, is always happy to answer questions as well. What questions do you have from this morning?
Sandana, did you give a new name for the COL chair? Is there a new
Yes.
person?
There are new co-chairs,
Okay.
Beverly Brock and Deb Hess. Those are the new co-chairs.
I know Deb very well.
You know Deb, yeah. And Deb was our moderator, and she was also a part of the search committee when Keith served.
Yeah.
Any
And I
other
know
questions?
Beverly too, so I'm not
And
well,
you-
but I know who she is.
Yes, so Deb Hess is a ruling elder at the Redwood Falls Church, and Beverly Brock is the new pastor. She was the interim pastor. So she's one of those people that we provide an exception for the temporary to become the next installed. And she is the new pastor of the Foley Church. Any other questions?
At our council meetings, we're gonna be needing a moderator. Is that already taken care of?
I believe you do have a moderator appointed, and I don't want to say who it is because I may make a mistake. So we will make sure that that is confirmed, but you do have a moderator. I want to say it's Linda Becken, but let me make sure that COL is in contact with the session, but I'm pretty sure you have a moderator already appointed.
Okay,
Well, and we have the Proudies, I know that, so Pam and Scott.
Okay. You have Pam and Scott, great.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
More questions?
Okay. Well, let me say a prayer as we conclude for today. Gracious God, we give you thanks for your people gathered. We thank you for electronics, and we thank you for your goodwill that you have for all of us. Bless the Wyndham Church, the Winnebago Church, and any other congregation that may be on the call today, and all of our presbytery as we are looking forward to your new vision for us. We ask that you care for these congregations as they are moving forward and looking to the future. Send pastors after your own heart. Bless your people with the resources that they need, and give them the assurance of your care and your grace. We ask all this in the name of Christ, we pray. Amen.
And Sandana, we have 10 o'clock church on Sunday. There is a little confusion on that, so
Okay.
we will see you for 10 o'clock church Sunday morning in Wyndham.
Thank you. I'll plan to be there between 9:15 and 9:30.
Oh, perfect.
Very good.
Okay. All right. Have a wonderful day. I'm very happy to provide the PowerPoint slide to you if it would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay, I certainly will do that.